Greetings, Manna 3301 students, and thanks for doing such a really great job on session 3. I wanted to visit with you about the discussion board questions that we had from session 3, primarily the question about the big 5 personality traits and the question about ethics and does your company have a written code of ethics. To start with, the big 5 and the whole idea of personality traits played a big role in our session, and it was the focal point of the assessments that you did out of session 3 that led to your writing of your papers. And the first written assignments went really well. I'm glad that many of you got a chance to either confirm some things that you had already determined about yourself, or maybe even learn some new information. But the questions that were on the discussion board of which character traits do you feel were most important for management from the big 5. Of course, those 5 being extroversion, negative affectivity, openness to experience, agreeableness, and conscientiousness. Well, I wanted to kind of go through each one of them. First of all, I don't think that a manager necessarily needs to be extroverted. And I know that there is a typical understanding of that word, the life of the party type, or never met a stranger type, but that's not necessarily the full definition of the term. If you look at the information from Myers-Briggs, they talk about extroversion and introversion as sort of defined by what do you do to recharge your batteries. The extrovert is going to call together friends and go out to dinner and have a good time in a crowd, where an introvert is going to recharge their batteries by finding a copy of their favorite book, or curling up by the fire, or watching a good movie by themselves, or something of that nature. It's not necessarily the life of the party versus the wallflower type definition. I know many a strong manager that is not necessarily considered an extrovert, but during their introverted times, or their times when they're alone, that's when they do a lot of contemplation and thinking and considerations of the things that are before them. Okay. As far as negative affectivity, I think that this is a big role to play in a manager, in that you hope that a manager does not have a high negative affectivity, or that mood score that tends to be always on the negative. I'm sure that many of you have experienced working in teams or groups or departments where the manager was always seeming to come down on the negative side of things. It affects the work environment. It affects the way people feel about just the environment of work, and not necessarily for the best. Now, negative affectivity sometimes does have its role in that it keeps us cautious whenever things we're considering new ideas or considering new paths, when the negative affectivity will ask that all-important question, what if? The devil's advocate sort of argument, if you will. But all in all, I think that a manager with a high negative affectivity might damage or negatively impact the work environment. So I'd be real cautious about dealing with that if you become a manager and you have a high negative activity score. Agreeableness, I think this is pretty important. Managers who are agreeable tend to have a capability of carrying on good, objective conversations. They're not necessarily going to abandon what they know to be right or true, but they are going to be open to a good discussion, or have that healthy debate that is sometimes necessary for a good team. In Patrick Lenciani's book, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, that he points out that debate is not a bad thing. The healthy debate and conflict, without the absent of fear of any kind of retaliation, really helps a team come to a stronger decision about the things that they're discussing. So agreeableness, I think, is at least open to that kind of communication. Conscientiousness, many of you had put on your answer that you felt that was the highest, and I tend to agree. You do want a manager who is conscientious, who is contemplative of all of the factors involved in what they're dealing with and what they're managing. You want a manager who is going to be attentive to detail, to looking for all aspects and all contributors to the argument at hand. And then lastly, openness to experience. Yeah, you do want your managers to be open to experience, because if you don't, then you may have managers that are resistant to change. And we all know, all of us have seen things change in our workplace, at DBU, all manner of things. I mean, just think of what the landscape of the campus at DBU would have looked like 10 years ago versus what it looks like now. There's been lots of change, especially the addition of buildings, the additions of departments and staff members and faculty, different courses of study. All of that is change. And openness to experience is what has allowed DBU to look at these new avenues, but their conscientiousness has allowed them to make sure that whenever we do take a step in a new direction, it stays within the scope that we feel God has put us in for the purpose and the objectives of DBU. So as you can see, there's a mix of these, that no one particular or one or two particular personality traits indicate a good manager or a bad manager for that matter, but you have to understand how these types of personality traits may impact someone's managerial style and therefore their relationship with not only their subordinates, but the people to whom they report as well. Now, the second question that was posed was, does your company have a written code of ethics? Many of you said yes, and there were some very good ones out there. Some of you said no, but it was just sort of understood. Here's my thoughts on that. In my day job, I am the employee relations consultant for a major corporation here in the United States, and I have about 10,000 employees that I conduct the employee relations investigations and corrective actions and terminations for this organization. One of the questions that I'm constantly asked by managers is, how in the world do I manage a bad attitude? I've got a good performer, but they're negatively impacting our work environment, or they're just not approachable. They do well at what they do, but nobody wants to work with them. How do I legislate or manage that bad attitude? Or how do I manage behavior? And this is where a written code of ethics, or as we call it with McKesson, the shared values. These are characteristics that are ingrained in such a way that they're usually published either in the employee handbook, on our website, or just throughout orientation. And ours is I care. It's integrity, customer focus, accountability, respect for others, and excellence. These are the characteristics that I use to coach managers on how to deal with behavior. If behavior in the workplace can be, it needs to be managed, if you do not have an objective standard by which to judge the behavior, it really isn't much more than someone's opinion. But you have managerial authority if you can point to an objective standard by which you're managing a particular behavior or performance. When you can say that your behavior is a violation of our shared value of respect for others, or accountability, or this is far less than excellence that we expect, then you've got an objective standard that you can point to say, this is what I have measured your behavior against, and that is why we are taking action to correct or change the behavior. So a code of conduct gives managers and organizations as a whole the opportunity to have that objective standard to measure and set expectations for behavior and conduct in the workplace. Well, once again, I really enjoyed reading your papers, reading your discussion board posts, and we're in session 4 now. And next week, we're going to be taking our first exam. So I've been in contact with many of you by phone and by email, and you're asking some great questions. Keep it up. I'm here to help you through this class as much as I am to facilitate the learning. And if you have any further questions, please feel free to reach out to me by email or by phone. I'm more than happy to help you in any way that I can. Remember now that on your discussion boards, the points scored are 12.5 points per discussion board question. But the way you earn that is you get 6.5 points for your answer to the question and 3 points each for the first 2 responses to your classmates. Don't forget to respond to your classmates and make sure that they post. These are easy points and you don't want to leave them on the table. The overall scoring for this class is the accumulation of points, not necessarily averaging of grades. So as it points out in the syllabus, the accumulation of points up to 1,000 points with 25 bonus points available will judge your grade. So anybody that accumulates 900 points or more will get an A, 800 points to 899 points a B, and so on. So don't be too worried if you miss a few points here and there, because the accumulation of points can help you throughout the semester. And just make sure that you're looking for those opportunities to pick up all the easy points so that you can have those already in the bank when it comes time for our final grade. So once again, have a great week, and I'll look forward to seeing you online. Bye now.